Good to see everyone, our guests, board members, professionals. This is a good opportunity, a forum of JDC Europe to share with you some more information about what we do in the region. You know, the best way to see what is going on is to travel. And I'm really happy to share with you that our committee member, Carol Levy, is going to lead a mission to Bulgaria and Romania on March 6 to 12, which also will include spending Purim in Bucharest. It will be a very interesting mission because we will join both communities and celebrate our cooperation and our working together, JDC and the communities. And we will be there, Amos and Russell and myself, and we invite you to come. It's going to be really interesting. Today is Rosh Chodesh, so I wish you Chodesh Tov, 1 month since Rosh Hashanah, unbelievable, but, and this is the only month that doesn't have any holiday. I would say thank God, because I had enough of the holidays. So basically we go to routine, and for us to go to routine is to share with you what we do on the region. And as I said, it's an opportunity to speak a little about our work on different countries. We will dive today to 3 countries or to 3 communities, and I would say to 3 very interesting people who live in Milan, in Berlin, and in Athens. They will share with us their lives, their programs, their challenges, and Amos will have a conversation with them. And then we'll go to breakout rooms, and you could choose any room you are interested to meet one of our guests and have time for questions and some kind of discussion. And I think this is what we try, you know, in Europe Committee, to share information, to be able to speak to our professionals and to our community leaders, and to share more information in depth. So before we go to that, I want to ask Russell Walkind, our interim regional director, to share with us some updates and some information about what is going on in our region lately. Russell, please.
Thank you, Mirav, and it's great to see all of you that are here, and thank you for making the time and for coming. I won't speak for long because I really do want to get to our guests and for us to dive into the communities, but I wanted to share maybe 3 updates or thoughts before we do that. The first is, and I'm looking around the screen and I'm seeing people like Irene and Alan, you know, who have been very involved in Warsaw over the years in the JCC. You know, the JCC in Warsaw has just celebrates its 9th year. And some of us were there at the opening and after 1 year. And anyone that's involved in Facebook can see, I think that what we have seen over the last 9 years in Warsaw just goes to show what happens when you bring the right people together with the right ideas and the right understanding of the local community culture, and the huge success of what JDC launched over in Warsaw 9 years ago. Today is now an independent JCC, and it's just wonderful for those people that have seen some of the pictures, and maybe we'll bring some in December to see what can happen in a Jewish community when JDC can work hand in hand with the local people to make something happen. So that's something we're really proud of at the moment. Number 1. Number 2 was on Sunday, I was in Bucharest in Romania, and I had such a moving time there. I was there for 24 hours, but I wanted to share both the reasons that I went and what I learned when I was there. The Romanian Jewish community, while the Ukraine-Russia situation crisis is still ongoing, in the early months, the Romanian Jewish community worked hand in hand with JDC to welcome, care for, and be supportive to the refugees in general, and specifically the Jewish refugees that crossed into Romania. Some of them stayed there for a few hours, some of them a few days, some of them a few weeks. We don't have a local office in Romania as JDC. What we do have is a historical and current partnership which has lasted over 100 years. And when we wanted to respond to fulfill our mission, when we spoke to the community, we understood very clearly this wasn't a JDC project. This wasn't a JDC alone mission. We had a Jewish community partner who stood alongside us and made it happen alongside us. The tent that was put up on the border with Ukraine, the food that was given to those that crossed, Jews and non-Jews, the deep care and commitment that was shown to those people in need was a shared mission from JDC and the Jewish community. And on Sunday, I represented JDC together along with Israel Sabag at an event where the community brought together volunteers and professionals. It was close to 50 people who had given of their time, who had spent days and weeks on that border, who had welcomed people in Bucharest, who had staffed the hotlines, and we said thank you. We said thank you for standing up, thank you for being there, and thank you for doing everything that you did. Now, the crisis is not over, and we know that. But in Romania, there is a sense of, wow, we've gone through 2 years of COVID. We went straight into having this huge operation in Romania to care for those that were coming. We then set up our summer camps in the summer, and then we had all the Chagim and the Jewish holidays, and this was their moment to breathe. And so on Sunday afternoon, we spent time with the most inner circle, the 15, I would say, leaders. Some of them are volunteers, some of them are professionals, some of them are lay leaders who had given hours. And we took a moment just to breathe. And we said to them, thank you. And we said to them, let's learn what went well. Let's learn from our success. Of course, we can always do things differently, better, alternatively in the future, but let's take a moment to learn from our success. And we really began to what we call harvest all the learning from the last few months. But in the evening, they all went home, they put on their suits and they put on their smart clothes and they came back to the JCC, where we were joined also by government representatives. And we gave them all certificates. And we really said, thank you, and we recognized. And we recognized them because, one, they deserve to be recognized. Two, we often forget to say thank you. And three, we know that if we need them again next time, when we pick up the phone or when the Jewish community pick up the phone, they will say, I'm here, how can I help? And that for me was both very significant and very emotional evening. The crisis that is not over, but it was a super important moment just to take a moment and say thank you. And the third thing I want to say, which connects a little bit into our program today, we are moving into a time of turmoil, or we've been there for a while and we continue to be there. There are a lot of challenges. We can talk about inflation, we can talk about energy crisis, we can talk about anti-Semitism. What we know is that JDC's mission has never been more relevant than it is today, and that for our work in Europe, it means it's not just Eastern and Central Europe, it is one Europe. We know that the responsibility we have with each and every Jewish community to have a partnership with them, to have relationships with them and to support them and be there alongside them is critically important. We don't know what will come next, but what we do know is that by working with those communities, the community can be better prepared and be more resilient, and JDC can have partners on the ground. And that, I think, is a lot of the thinking that Marav brought when she suggested this as a program for today. Let's talk about some of the communities we don't often talk about, and yet JDC sees their commitment and their partnership as critical, both what we do, but also to help them do what they need to do. And so with that, I'm going to stop, Marav. I'm going to hand back to you.
Thank you very much. As we say always, we speak today about one Europe, and we speak about JDC assisting every community or every Jew wherever he is. And I think for 2,000 years we have critical problems being Jewish, so we will always have work. Before I continue, I see that BJ is with us today, so allow me, BJ, to share with you our deepest sorrow and condolences for the loss of your husband. We were traveling together, and we appreciate everything you do for JDC, and we are very, very sorry we couldn't be next to you. So with our heart, we are with you. Now we'll go to, I want to introduce Amos Levy, JDC Director of Planning for Europe, Africa, and Asia, to facilitate the next segment. And we will know 3 dynamic Jewish leaders from very different European Jewish communities. Amos, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Merav, and welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This group is really representing time zones from literally all over the world. So thank you for joining. You know, many of us have traveled to all sorts of interesting and fascinating places, but as a tourist, it can sometimes be very challenging to kind of get an insider's view into what a Jewish community is really like. And we also know that there are programs, there are interventions, there are all different kinds of things that JDC does and that all different kinds of organizations do throughout the world. But at the end of the day, it's really about the who. It's the people on the ground, people who are entrepreneurial, who are creative, who are committed and passionate, just like the people on this call today, who really are the ones who make a difference, who make those things happen. What we wanted to do today was really provide all of us the opportunity to get to know three dynamic leaders from very different kinds of communities, to get a little bit of more of an insider's view into these communities, to get a bit more of an understanding about how JDC interacts with those communities, and to hear it from them in their own words. We will have opportunities to ask questions in the breakout rooms. What we're going to do right now is sort of a short panel with the three of them. I'll introduce each community and each person. You'll have, at the end of the event, we'll be sharing with you the bios for everybody who's speaking today. And let's get into it. So first, I'd love to talk about Milan. We have here Simone Mortara, who's representing Milan. And Milan is an ancient Jewish community, goes back centuries, and but it's a bit different than the rest of the Italian Jewish community. We'll talk a little bit about that. But it's a community of approximately 10,000 Jews, diverse and exciting. And Milan is certainly an exciting tourist destination as well. So I'm sure many of the people on the call have actually been to the community. Simon was born in Milan. He was very active in Jewish youth movements growing up. He currently lives there with his wife and two children. Simone works as an oil executive. Actually, he's not a professional Jewish leader. He's a lay leader, active in both the local Milan Jewish community and across Europe, where he's currently serving as the vice president for the European Council of Jewish Communities. Our next guest is Joanna Nachmias from Athens, Greece. You know, the Jewish presence in Greece goes back. We're getting close to Hanukkah. Meirav just spoke about Rosh Hashanah and all the holidays. We're not that far off from Hanukkah already, and we all know about our deep connection with Greece through that. So we're talking about a very deep history going back thousands of years. Currently, there are about 4,000 Jews living in Greece, and the community is a tight-knit community with two main synagogues. There's Chabad, there's a Jewish day school, and JDC's involvement in the community goes back really to World War II, but we came in a much stronger way with the economic crisis in 2010. Joanna was born in London, but grew up in Athens and is an active member of the Jewish community. Joanna is a businesswoman, working in family business and other businesses, and has served as an active leader in Athens Jewish community, and she's currently serving on her second consecutive term as board member of the Athens Jewish community. Our third guest is Dekel, and he comes from Berlin. Dekel is actually originally from Israel, but has been living in Berlin for a number of years. The Jewish community in Berlin is an extraordinary story. It's really experiencing a renaissance that 30 years ago, none of us would ever have imagined the Jewish life in Berlin and in Germany in general would be what it is. Germany has become the fastest growing Jewish community in Europe, and with massive influxes of Jews, not only from the former Soviet Union, but from Israel as well, and many places throughout the world. I don't think any of us would recognize Jewish life in Berlin now if the last time that we were there was 30 years ago. Dekel is the president of the Jewish Center Frankenlaufer Synagogue, where he essentially found a synagogue that was not really thriving, I think we can say, and he turned it around to essentially turn it into a community center. It's a synagogue that had been destroyed by the Nazis and is really gone through what I could say would be a resurrection of the dead almost, in a way. And he's not only involved in this particular center, but he's also a founding director of Eruv Hub, which is a Jewish co-working space, and also Laba Berlin, which is an artist fellowship program combining study of Jewish texts with artistic production. So Dekel is really a social entrepreneur in the Jewish space. He's also a postdoctoral research fellow focusing on Jewish-Muslim relations. So thank you to the three of you for joining us. I'd love to get started with first question, Simona. I'd love to turn to you. When you and I were speaking, you mentioned that the Milanese Jewish community is unlike the rest of the Italian Jewish community. If maybe you could explain to us why that is and what makes it so different.
Thank you, Amos. Thank you, everybody. So when we speak about Italian Jewry, we always speak back to ancient time and Roman time. And we are proud to say that we are the ancient Jewish community in Europe, if not more. Milan is a particular situation in this panorama, because cutting short from 2000 years ago, for 300 years, let's say from 1500 to 1850, the Jews were not allowed to live in Milan. This because Milan was a country was connected with the Spanish world, and so you know everything about what happened to the Sephardic Jews, cutting off from Spain and other region. So Milan was a particular place. The community of Milan was not existing, was a subsidiary of a community of Mantova, in which today there are only 80 people living, and was start flourishing about the freedom of the ghettos when the people were allowed to go back in the Lombardia, in the wealthy region of the country, in the commercial areas, and so we started slowly to go back. So the first immigrant were the Italian Jews of the other cities, but then something happened, and after the First World War was welcoming a lot of Ashkenazi Jews coming from the German world, feeling and sensing what was happening before the Holocaust in the 30s. Then the war happened, and we all suffer, we all strive and try to survive. And from 1948, now we start receiving a new type of Jews in our city. So in 1956, they arrived, the friends from Egypt, and in 1967, we arrived the friends from Libya and other parties. And in 1979, we received a huge number of Jews from Mashhad, from Libya, from Iran. So the community keep changing. There are Italians, there are Ashkenazi, there are Sepharad, there are other kind of origin Jews, and Milan was welcoming. So this is the positive vibe that I want to bring. It was banking whole. It was difficult, but with the help and the reconstructions and the support of different organizations, we became one community, and we grew up as one community till today. So this is a little bit of images that I love to share with you, also because nowadays we are living in a situation in which many Jews are flooding from different countries, from Ukrainian in particular. So being able to welcome and open the doors with the support on everybody that can, is a characteristic, is a resilience characteristic that the Jewish community should have. So I think that.
Thank you, Simona. So do you have Ukrainian refugees living in Milan now?
We have few of them, not so many, because of course, you better know than me that they want to be closer to their home. There are many Jews that were in Germany or in other country, in Romania and all the other neighboring country, or Israel. But still, we organize ourselves and we try to do our best to do that.
Thank you. So, Dekel, I'd like to turn it to you now. In the spirit of talking about diversity. So we know that Berlin has become a very diverse Jewish community. All of Germany really has become quite a diverse Jewish community. I'd love to hear from you a little bit about if you see that playing itself out in a challenging, like what are the challenges that you have from the diversity of the different communities that represent not only in the Jewish community in Berlin, but in particularly in your center that you're running, your sort of mini community, how that plays itself out, particularly you as an Israeli who has made Berlin his home.
Thank you for the great question and also the opportunity to speak to you all. I wanted to add to what you said in the beginning. I think if people would have come to Berlin 30 years ago, they wouldn't recognize Berlin at all anymore. It's not just the Jewish community that has changed. The whole city is totally different than that split city that it was 30 years ago. And I think one thing, I mean, when I arrived in Berlin 20 years ago, one thing that drew me is exactly all these empty spaces that the city has. The fact that this was a fractured city, it wasn't complete. It was, there was a lot of space and there was also a lot of history to live up to work with. And I think this were both challenges for me personally, and I think for a lot of Jews who arrive to Berlin, no matter where they come from, but also it was a resource and a place for opportunities, and there's a lot of freedom in it. And there's different levels to approach this question. You can talk about this question from a top-down, a top-bottom, with the challenges for the Jewish community as a whole, if you will. And maybe it's important to say here that the classical structures in Germany are that there is such a thing as a Jewish community. So one organization that tends to both to Orthodox, Reform, conservative synagogues. There's around 10 synagogues that are part of the Jewish community of Berlin. And the Jewish community also runs schools, kindergartens. So it's one big organization that 30 years ago was the one authority in Berlin. And in the last 30 years, that has changed. There are a lot of organizations that have grown up alongside the Jewish community of Berlin, be it Chabad, be it Lauder community, be it grassroots organizations. So for the Jewish community of Berlin, that I'm not a speaker of the Jewish community of Berlin, I'm just trying to give here a broader understanding. Of course, the challenge is to find its place along all these growing and this diversifying institutions. One thing that we recognize is that a lot of institutions are also religiously based, and we think it's important to create a place that is not connected with a denomination, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, because a place like this would help facilitate what I see as the biggest challenge for Jewish life in Berlin, is finding a place to bring in this diversity. So Berlin has seen waves of immigration from the former Soviet Union, and it has become clear for us, especially in the last 8 months, the former Soviet Union is in itself a very diverse place. I think if 8 months ago people would just said Russian Jews, today it's clear that that's not a proper denomination, and this has itself brought in conflict to a lot of communities within Germany. 49% of those former Soviet Jews actually come from the Ukraine, and a lot of others come from Russia, from Lithuania, and from other places. What we are trying to create is to bring in, to create a space to bring in those differences, a place for meeting for those differences, for former Soviet Jews, Israelis, Americans, South Americans, Jews coming from Italy, from France. Berlin has really been a magnet for, especially for young Jews, and it's also a place where we can experiment a lot, right? This is why we created a Roof Hub, a co-working space for Jewish social entrepreneurs. It's not just for people who are Jewish, who are doing projects, but it's for people who are trying to do new things for Jewish life in Berlin. And we think that this experiments can be helpful also for other communities all over Europe that don't necessarily have all these meeting points and all these people really trying to also find a home and create for themselves a Jewish home in a complicated city like Berlin.
Thank you, Deco. Joanna, my understanding of the Athens community is that it's not as diverse as what we've heard thus far about Milan and Berlin. And I'm curious, I'm seeing it in the papers a lot, even today, about the energy crisis. And that seems to be on a lot of people's minds throughout the world, but particularly in Europe. And I'm curious if you're experiencing some of these fears about the economy and the energy crisis, if you're experiencing that as having some kind of a direct impact on Jewish life today in Athens.
Yes, hello, Amos. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. I would like to say that the Athens community is mainly, they're not very religious. They consider themselves more as an ethnicity. And based on that, it's a tightly woven community, and we have been unfortunate from the point of view that we had a very bad financial crisis in the year 2010, and that went on just as we were recuperating. Came the pandemic that hit us as a second crisis, and of course it's been a community that's been in a very difficult situation for the past 12 years. We've been very fortunate to have large organizations come to our rescue, and like JDC, and support us and help us and be there for us and help us maintain everything that we were offering our members. And now, in addition, comes this oil crisis, which fortunately, for the time being, it hasn't hit us, all the members of the community, but we know that eventually we will all feel it. We live in a warm country. Athens is a warm city, but of course the result of the oil crisis will hit all the market, and evidently it will hit the members too. We hope that we will be able to continue to help and support them, and that we will be able to overcome this difficulty as we have all the others in the past.
Do you have any concerns about the young people leaving? Has that been the trend that's been happening in the community in general? And if so, are there ways that you're trying to address that you can address that?
It's been felt very strongly in the past 8 years. More and more of the youth of this city have been leaving, seeking better job opportunities abroad. And this is something that demographically we will feel in the future. The community is trying very hard to offer high level of education to all the children, hoping that through the highest possible education, we will be able to maintain them here. But of course, it goes with the economy of the country. And from the moment there aren't any good jobs here, and the economy is going through turmoil, or is continue going through turmoil, it is natural that they will be leaving. Nothing more than educating them in the highest possible way is something that we can do. We hope that we will be able to give them incentives to return eventually back to this city.
Simona, I'd love to ask you what your favorite part of being part of the Jewish community in Milan is. What if I were to come and visit you and say, I want to experience the magic that is the Milan Jewish community, what would come to your mind?
So Milan Jewish community is a community that it's full of different people, full of different thoughts, very vibrant in a sense that every day you can find organized something, but you can find something organized not mainly on the official communities. There are number of organizations and activities, and the people want to activate themselves. What you will see is a vibrant center that is now becoming the school, and the life around the school and the support of the school is becoming the most important thing, also for the reason that Joanna explained us. We need to train and we need to form our people and our children, our young adults to maintain the identity. And the identity is critical because we don't know if they will be living in Milan or they will live in Rome or in another community in Israel, in Europe, or in US. We need to form friends, members of the community that will be members of any other communities in the Jewish world, proud Jews with a strong identity. So this is the challenge, and is the challenge, but is the nice thing that you can find. You can find different opinions, millions of opinions about these discussions, and you will find all of them in one community.
Thank you. Dekel, I think that a lot of people, particularly from North America, when they think about life in Jewish communities in Europe, one of the first things that comes to their mind is anti-Semitism. And I'd love for you to just briefly address that. Is that something that people in your community that they think about? Is that part of the normal conversation or dialogue among people, or is it completely a non-issue that just sort of ends up in the papers somewhere, but it's not something that's really on the radar?
Yeah, I think living as a Jew in Germany, or in Germany, generally anti-Semitism is always on the radar, and in some ways, I mean, living in modern day Germany, who is very aware of its past and open of its past, makes anti-Semitism into something that shapes Jewish life in general, or dealing with anti-Semitism. I'm not saying anti-Semitic attacks, but thinking about anti-Semitism, talking about anti-Semitism, being involved in different initiatives around anti-Semitism affects Jewish life. And just next week is a commemoration day for Kristallnacht, and it's something that we work on together with the communities. So there is that level of historic awareness, and then there's also the question of connecting it to today. There has been, I mean, ever since the attack on Yom Kippur 2019 in Halle, anti-Semitism has become a much more real factor. I think until that point, I would have also said, yes, there's anti-Semitism, but it's not lethal. There hasn't been real attacks. It's not something that should worry us on a physical level. I think since then, that's not the case anymore. For the young generation of German Jews, this is, and I think for everyone, but especially the young generation, is really growing up with that attack as something that's shaping their awareness. It's shaping their awareness, though, in different ways. There's different ways of approaching the question of anti-Semitism, depending also on political views. The attack was made by, for those who don't know, was done by a right-wing radical, a so-called lone actor, which is never really alone. Of course, there's this whole right-wing extremism and ideology that is also a part of German politics. And different approaches of dealing with it is looking for alliances with other minorities, or strengthening bonds with the political kind of establishment. So I think also there's ways of dealing is a form in which the diversity of approaches within the Jewish community are being expressed. For me and my work, and for our community, we do not let ourselves be defined by anti-Semitism. This is not something that is really but shaping our everyday activity. What we are doing is building a Jewish community with the help of JDC and other organizations that is based on a positive Jewish identity, on dealing with Jewish scripture, on Jewish social organizations, a community that is an identity that is sustainable for continued life in Germany, and not an identity that is based on the thought that anti-Semitism is raising in the head. It's too dangerous to live here. We have to find refuge somewhere else. Vice versa, we're actually acting as a place of refuge for Jews now coming from the Ukraine, or especially from the Ukraine. So it is a positive long-term outlook on Jewish life in Berlin.
Thank you, Dekel. So we are going to break into rooms, and people will have the opportunity to choose which room you go into. And in those rooms, we'll be able to get to know the specific work of our panelists in a little bit deeper way, and you'll be able to ask questions. So if you can put up the breakout room vote, then we can have everybody move. So you'll see something should jump up that says join a breakout room. You click on that and it will take you. Thank you all. See you in the rooms.
Welcome back. Good, I hope it was for everyone interesting. Our group was highly interesting. The only problem, I think, in breaking rooms is that you can join only one room and you don't hear the other people. But I think if I will summarize what we heard in all three rooms, I think I can put it in 3 points. The first one is we have diversity. In the last few years, we have a big diversity in the communities. We used to speak 10 years or 15 years ago, not 30, but around 10 years ago, we could speak about one group and we could count the needs. We can't do it today. And this is all over Europe today. The second one is that changes are happening very, very quickly, especially this year after the Ukraine war, because all over Europe, refugees are slowly coming. It can be 20 people to Ireland or to somewhere else, but they're dropping, and especially in Berlin. And we heard what Dekel had just said to us, because you cannot speak today about Russian Jews. There is also diversity in that. And the last thing that I think we heard in all rooms is that Jewish identity is the issue that all Jewish communities in Europe have to deal with. Not only taking care of elderly and speaking about, supporting, but really attracting young people, intermarriage. This is all questions that we started dealing in Savash, having the children coming to us and starting asking if they are Jewish and what does it mean for them to be Jewish, and then raising them up to be leaders of the communities. So all these three things we see happening all over Europe, Eastern and Western Europe, and we will continue to be there for them. I hope each one of you got in his room, heard about what JDC does everywhere. We heard it very clear, and this is what we build the future, and we are there to build Jewish lives, anything needed. And also JDC is changing, and we see it very strongly in our region. So I want to thank Joanna, Simone, Dekel. It was really, we just had the taste, and we have many questions, but maybe we'll have the opportunity to have you with us in another forum. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing with us. We appreciate it very much. Thank you, Amos. You made it very nicely, and we're very happy to have you with us. And see you in December in our board. It was very, very good to see you all. Thank you for joining us today. And I really wish you good times to everyone. Thank you, and see you soon. Bye-bye.